That was wonderful. Ladies, truly, truly. And again, a big thank you to Stacey Balt. We are all beautiful people, as her song says. But now, it is my pleasure and my honor to present our keynote speaker this afternoon. So y'all know, you've seen her in the building. Listen, you all know her for being front and center at the White House press briefings, following the President of the United States, not just the current one, not just the last one, we won't say his name, even including President Obama. She has been out there asking the questions that we know all of us sitting at home are asking, right? She is a part of that fourth estate that asks the difficult questions and holds power to account. She does it tirelessly, effortlessly, at least she makes it look easy. And we all know her as the moderator of Washington Week, the White House correspondent for PBS NewsHour. You can watch her on Fridays anchoring the show. Without further ado, Yamiche Alcindor.
Thank you for that. I am so happy to be here. I am so happy to be here. I feel like my heart is full just standing here, watching people dance, hoping people don't end up in urgent care, right? Like, my heart is full because I know that if no one else has my back, Haitian women always have my back. And you know, it's a special thing to know, especially in the last 2 years, that you are part of this community and that you have women that are praying for you and you have people that are wishing you well. You know, the last 2 years were awful, right? They were globally, internationally, personally. We were all sort of just hoping we could get through it. And for me, it was bumping into a lot of you at airports, at the restaurants when things were going wrong with Haiti. I remember going to Port-au-Prince when stuff was happening and just being at the restaurant talking to people and feeling a little bit like my mom. I was like, what? My mom used to do this. Like something would happen and then she would somehow need Glio and then she would just be talking to people for 4 hours in a restaurant. It's very weird to turn into her, but but it's where I've become because our traditions are such that we are best in community. And I've been thinking about l'union fait la force so much in trying to come and pray and think about, like, what can I say to these ladies? And I kept just thinking about that, the idea that we are people who at the end of the day, when we banded together, we kicked slaveholders out of our countries and we can do anything when we're together. So I wanted to come and think about sort of 3 things because I want to make it fast because I feel like I'm not going to be the Haitian pastors who like take 45 minutes. I know what y'all are, you know what I'm talking about. So for me, I want to focus on 3 things. The first is finding your purpose. The second is finding your community. And the third is finding time for yourself. So for me, one of the most important decisions I ever made was to become a journalist. And it was, I will say, a hard decision because I grew up in a Haitian household where my dad was like, clearly you're going to be a lawyer, right? Like, and you know, for like 4 years of college, I interned at newspapers. And when my dad would call me from Haiti, I would say, of course I'm going to be a lawyer. Why wouldn't I be a lawyer? I took the LSAT. I got into law school. I was like lying like to my father every weekend. And then I finally had to break the news that I was going to be a journalist. But I remember making that decision, especially at 21, when I was so young, but knowing this is my purpose. I prayed on it. I thought about it. I was like, this is what I want to do. And you know, that father of mine who was calling me from Haiti, screaming at me, now he's like, oh, you know, my daughter's on TV. And I'm like, all right, daddy. But I say that because to me, we obviously have these families. And I always talk to, especially young Haitian women, I say, the reason why your parents want you to be doctors or nurses or lawyers is because they want you to be stable, right? They want you to be safe. At the end of the day, what my dad wanted for me was stability and to make sure that I was going to be the next generation of Haitians who could survive and thrive. So I say, you don't have to listen to your parents in terms of what exactly you're going to do, but understand where they're coming from. And in thinking about being a journalist, I was thinking about a time where I realized that I couldn't separate being Haitian from being a journalist. It was in January 2018, and I had just quit my job at the New York Times, and I was sort of in a relief mode because I wasn't starting at PBS yet. And I got a call from my aunt. I was shopping. I was hanging out with my at the time my fiance, now my husband, and my aunt called me crying, and she said, "Did you hear what Trump said?" And I said, "No, I didn't hear what Trump said." Like, what did he say? He said, Haiti's an S-hole country. He said, and she started crying. She said, "What are you going to do about it?" And I was like, what? I was like, I don't even have a job right now. I actually don't. I'm not really a journalist in this 2-week period. But I immediately knew I had to do something. What can you do? That's what being Haitian is. It's a burden in some ways, but it's an incredible privilege, right? It's an incredible blessing because I knew what other Haitian American is in my position where I can then go and ask real questions and get real answers. So I remember going on Rachel Maddow that night, and I remember saying, the Haitian government's formally asking for an explanation. And I remember reporting on that story, and to me, it grounded myself because if I had done anything else, I probably would have been like, I can't do this. It's my 2 weeks off. I don't care. And instead, I jumped right back into it. So for me, I say that to say, the things that I cry about are the things that end up on the front page of the New York Times, or they end up in the A block of PBS NewsHour. I know that probably all of you ladies have something that moves you, that gets you out of bed, that makes you want to just take on the world. For me, that's journalism. But for you, it could be anything. And I implore you to find that thing, to hold on to that thing, to grab that thing, and to find a group of people, which is my second point, who will support you through that thing. So when I figured out that journalism was my thing, I then found so many people who were invested in me. So I think about my earliest mentors are Jacqueline Charles, right? The great Jacqueline Charles of the Miami Herald. Someone who I consider to be like my journalism mom. I was 17 years old when I met her, right? She was the first person who ever interviewed me for a job. She asked me what I like to do, and I said party. I had zero interviewing skills. And Jackie was like, yeah, but you know what? I see you, and I'm gonna help you. So, and to this day, when people ask me, when all this, all these stories are going on about Haiti with the Haitian migrant crisis, and when people call me up and try to put me on TV to talk about it, I say, well, have you called Jackie? And that to me is also being in community. It's making sure that you know that there are other people who can also be the experts, who are also people that you can talk up. I see Theola right in front of me, and I think about being at the Washington Post and being super overwhelmed and completely confused, and Theola being like, it's gonna be fine. This is gonna be fine. Right? And this is the same person who I can tell you when I was buying my house, I called Theo in the middle of the morning being like, where should I live exactly? Tell me where my kids should probably go to school if I want to have one. That to me is what finding your community is. It's finding people who take the time to say, okay, well, actually, what kind of school do you want your kid to be in and what's going on? And for me, I've gotten really, really lucky that I've been able to assemble these people, a lot of them Haitian women, but men as well, but people who really, really care about you, people who will take the time when you're having a bad day or when you're laid off or when someone has said something cross to you or when you're having a great day and you want to have someone to really, really be happy for you. Not jealous, but really, really happy for you, right? It can be very hard to find. But it can absolutely be the thing that sustains you. And especially in the last year, when I lost family members to COVID, and I was sort of a mess, to be honest. I was like, how in the world do we just transition to Zoom and everyone's kind of just going through, we're not all heartbroken and crying and mourning and not even being able to go to funerals, right? The thing that sustained me was my people, was my community. And it was people that I got on Facebook with or got on FaceTime with. So I would implore you, and it sounds like you're already good at finding community because you're here. but I would implore you to really lean on the people that are around you, because I know I was raised by a Haitian mother who I would say for at least the first 30 years of her existence, she just didn't show weakness. Right? She kind of taught me not to show weakness. And I had to sort of unlearn that. I had to tell my mom, like, no, it's okay. It's okay if you had a bad day. Like, why don't you tell me about it? And I think that my mom is my best friend. And I think now even more, she can maybe even a little bit admit that I've taught her some things about being able to tell me when she's upset and being able to process things and being able to say when you're not okay. And that brings me to my last point, which is taking time for yourself. You know, I was listening to Stacey and she talked about resiliency. And as soon as she said the word resiliency, I thought, yeah, but resiliency requires rest. It requires you to take care of yourself. It requires you to really, really be invested in taking a day off or going on vacation. So case in point, Afghanistan happened and there was all these, stories and there was so much to cover. And I was for like at least a good 7 days of that, I was in Jamaica. And I almost flew home, like basically almost every day. But something told me, like, no, you haven't been like with your husband and just like floating in a beach in 2 years. Like, just give yourself some rest. And I leaned into that kind of against my own sort of instincts, but I would never take that time back. Because as soon as I landed, the terrorist attack happened. And there was always more news. There's always going to be more things to happen, especially in our community. There are going to be more people that need you and more things that you can do. I'm looking at you, Nadine, in particular. Because you do so much and you're so, I think, someone who I feel like is really, really a resource in our community. But I think in some ways it's like you also have to take time for yourself and take time to really, and for me, I always joke about the fact that like I made time for love, which is I guess my last point. I've been married for 3 years now, and I'm happy that I made time for love. It could be that it's your friends or whatever. Now I should say, of course my mom's Haitian, so she like was very influential in in how I met my husband. Won't go into the whole story, but like it includes her putting me in a dress and putting makeup on me before I met my husband. But I say all that to say that I think at the end of this, I'm only 34. I'll just say it. I'm 34. But I think at the end of life, what you look at is who are the people that were around me and who are the people that I loved. And losing people in 2020 and 2021, I think the thing that I took away was you got to make time to really be happy and to find joy. And it has to be while you're doing all this work, but it has to be that you find time for yourself. So Oprah always says the most valuable thing you can give yourself is time. And I absolutely believe that. So I stole that from Oprah and I give it to you. So anyways, I just want to say thank you so much for welcoming me. I came to Haitian Ladies Network long before I was an anchor, long before I was a White House correspondent. I loved coming here. Especially living in DC, coming from Miami, much like a lot of you, I landed in DC and didn't have a sort of Haitian community, and it was the first time that I had been in a city where we weren't taking over like whole blocks of the city. So Haitian Ladies Network, to be in DC, it warms my heart. I'm so happy to see this organization going strong, and I hope to see you guys next year and the year after that. Thank you.